And the United Kingdom is a highly developed nation that exerts considerable international, economic, political, cultural influences. But before we get to that, let's tell you that the aviation industry has continually evolved and technology has played a vital role in this development. In recent years, there has been significant advances in the use of technology to enhance safety, efficiency, and customers' experience. There's a lot happening now around closed airspace with Niger and other developments across a sector that is still struggling to come back to full pre-pandemic levels, and all that has affected growth in the aviation industry. Joining me live in the studio to start this discussion today is a managing partner of Aglo Aviation Support Services Limited, Mr. Tayo Ojuri. It's good to see you. Good afternoon. Thank you for your time.
Good afternoon. It's always a pleasure to be here.
After going all around, you've been around. We're going to talk about that, what's been happening around that space. But first, let's start with this very big issue. We see sanctions against Niger, and one of it is about the airspace, you know, no flight zone and all of that. You're a practitioner. Tell us what this really means, not just for Niger, but I'm also looking at for the entire continent.
Interestingly, when there's the security breach, and in this case, when there was a change of government, the new Nigerian government thought there was going to be an attack, so they closed down their airspace. Over and beyond that, when there's a security breach, as we had in Sudan, whereby they had the two conflicting sides fighting, you know, at that point, they actually damaged a Saudi aircraft. And at that, they had to close the airspace. Now, Libya is still under threat. So from Libya down to Sudan and over in Niger as well, we have the closure. How does this now affect lots of aircrafts coming in from Europe or wherever they're going down south, and now have to bypass those airspaces as mandated, even with bilateral agreements in enforcement. Unfortunately, during war or the time of that the peace has been threatened, you find out that this has to be the way. So how does this affect airlines? There's going to be a lot of wear and tear, and we've actually started seeing a lot of airlines taking a hit in the sense that you had South African Airways yesterday going out. They had to stop in Lagos for a technical stop. They have to take extra, they come up here, take some fuel so that they can divert. There are alternative routes, but it's just a longer route to their location. So they have to take a technical stop, fuel up to continue, which is more money, higher cost of operation, and someone would have to pay for it.
And the passengers will pay for that, of course.
Eventually. Apart from the wear and tear, because you find out that, let's bring it to the operations of the airlines. You actually have hours, operations counted by hours. So you actually have an aircraft that is designated to fly from, say, Lagos to London, 6 hours every day. That hours, now you're taking an extra 1 hour, because if you look at that stretch, it's 2,600 approximately miles. And for depending on the aircraft, you're looking at about 2 hours extra. So you're having approximately an hour, 2 hour extra flight time. So you're adding that flight time to the wear and tear of your operations of that aircraft. So that aircraft will have to come in due for operations or maintenance earlier than usual.
And this is not just limited to what is happening. I think we've had something similar in Sudan and some other areas. So it's like coming together. All of this would affect the entire outlook of the industry, maybe talking about the African outlook for the African aviation airspace.
This is closer to home. That's why it's front burner now. But don't forget when a year plus ago, when Ukraine and Russia. Issue started, we actually, a lot of airlines had to actually stop flying over the Russian airspace. So with that happening, you now realize that this is, they would actually have to find an alternative route. And they would at some point there will be a leveler. So things will, yes, there will be a shock in the system, which always there will be shock, which makes life dynamic. And with the dynamic, people look for alternatives and try to balance the operation.
And sometimes you don't know how long this would take. That's the ugly part of it. You won't be able to project and say, oh, how long would this get sorted? But like I asked earlier, for the continent, a continent that is pushing for AFCFTA, a continent that has this bilateral agreement that you talked about, that's trying to promote trade in between themselves and, you know, trying to take advantage of that population and that big market.
Yes.
Let's look at the implication on that.
Don't forget there are like rudimentary issues, political issues. This itself, the changes in government in about 3 or 4 countries, namely in Mali, Burkina Faso, Niger, Guinea-Conakry, are French countries.
Yeah.
So there are lots of political antecedents, colonial antecedents tied to it, and lots of all these factors are actually showing forth now. Now, with that said, they have to address these political issues that are actually burning up and showing that this is actually higher than what it is at the moment. But now bring that to aviation. With that, how would it affect aviation? We need to we have lots of countries that are Francophone, Anglophone, within, even, let's bring it, before we bring it to Africa, within West Africa. There are a lot of currency issues. There are lots of border issues. So having looked at all that, this is going to be a huge hindrance to the effective implementation of AFTA. Because you find out there are a lot of countries at this point that are separated. And there are lots of countries that now we're waiting on the sidelines to see what next step for ECOWAS. So
what next step? I think the meeting is tomorrow.
Yes, what next step? And with the next step of ECOWAS, you find that lots of people say, no, war is not the option. Military attack is not the option. It's been to leverage on political and negotiation, so that they can actually have a judge, or rather than a war, and easy, amicable resolution to these issues. Because that way, we still have a land mass. Let's bring that to Nigeria, a land mass of lots of states across the north of Nigeria that are bordering Niger.
True.
That are not just bordering Niger. These countries are landlocked. Trade, which is what we were talking about. Togo actually went ahead to build a deep sea port. Most of the goods and services, goods that go to Niger, Burkina, Mali, go from Togo. So, and Benin. So you find out that with this closure, it's going to incapacitate the economy, and we will now see lots of insecurity within the sub-region, which is going to affect trade and growth.
Great stuff. Now, we are staying so much, so let's come back home. We expect a comprehensive safety audit by International Civil Aviation Organization. Yes, I know that will really interest you. What more do we need to know about this?
As everything else. It would interest me, and it's interesting because the more and the better we set all our ducks in a row to ensure that we have our safety audits. We have lots of questions. We have there are lots of questions that the traveling public have questions about operations of airlines in Nigeria. So with the safety audits, one, it reassures the traveling public, it reassures the stakeholders, as it were, to ensure that the safety process and the policy is being adhered to. It's not just about the audit, it's to ensure that the process prior to this audit is actually in line with both best global practices. You find out that lots of airlines, domestic, are actually self-regulating themselves before making sure they're in line with best international practice prior to being audited by NCAA. And that's why you saw that fuel and water mix issue that was brought to the fore, and SCA was able to address it immediately.
Because some would say maybe because of what happened and all of that. There was even a crash one, recently. Another thing. Is that why this is coming up, or is this just a normal audit that comes up periodically?
They are normal audits. They are periodic audits. They are the ones that are known and those that the inspectors just show up. So these are all the process. It's just when you're doing that audit, is to show the FAA to show that these are all on the spot impromptu inspections that you've done, and these are your findings. And it's not to be punitive with it. It's to ensure that all these challenges are actually addressed. Whatever gaps that are found are actually closed to ensure that we are in line with best international practice, and safety for us is front burner.
It's very, very important, especially when we are on air. We don't joke with that. Let's look at our other issues. Since we liberalize and open up the I&E window and the forex market, we expect that repatriation should be better than it used to be. Reserves are a little bit up, according to the figures we saw from the central bank. Not significantly up, but at least to a level. But let me just ask that, what's been the impact of this development by the Tinubu administration with regards to opening up the FX space, the FX market?
I'm listening to the last the last interview by the acting CBN governor. There's something that resonated with me. He said there's pent-up demand for Forex. The pent-up demand is not just an aviation demand. It's a demand across various sectors, from manufacturing to students, to across even to the bakery person, and to the importer of fuel. So you have that pent-up demand that is still out there. We're not unable to meet that demand. So let's bring that and let's layer that on the outstanding money that is due to foreign airlines. As at the end of April, it was about $812 million. So now, how much of that, which is, I think, what your question is, how much of that has actually been repatriated?
Yeah.
We're looking at we still have approximately 75% outstanding. So you see why all this put together is why we're still experiencing a high price tickets for Nigerians traveling out of Nigeria, because you find out that due to this price, the airlines are not opening up the lower and the cheaper ticket fares to the traveling public, because it's a function of when will I get my money. And don't forget the I&E that you mentioned, and he did mention that it's not called I&E, it's an open window.
It's not an open window, yes. So it's not an I&E window, yes. That's true.
So with the open window,
yes,
if I sold my ticket, or if I sell my ticket today, at what price will I repatriate or send that money out? Because that money is not sent at that day. It's normally sent maybe twice a week, according to the IATA billing settlement platform. So by the time that money is changed and sent, you've seen how the dollar has gone at the parallel market, well, not parallel market anymore. I'm sure we still need to.
Honestly, we still need to get all of those clarifications.
Exactly, we still have to ensure.
But according to the CBN, that market wasn't even existing before now. They don't take it as a market, but we know that it exists.
Exactly. So now, with that change and that fluctuation due to demand and supply, we're finding out the prices are higher. So to answer your question, or to come back on your question, we have about 75% of that 812 million still outstanding within Nigeria.
A big one. Now, let's look at policy issues. And when we talk policy issues, we expect a minister that would steer the affairs of the Ministry of Aviation.
Yes.
We know there's a lot that needs to be done. Yes. So let's should we set an agenda for whoever, because we expect the portfolios to come in anytime soon.
That's correct.
Can we set an agenda?
Yes.
What are your expectations for whoever picks up that portfolio, aviation, a lot is in the bag. Don't forget. We can go on and on to say about the issues.
A lot is in the bag for Nigeria, as it were. Now, it's just to ensure that aviation is a catalyst to the economy. Aviation is a driver to every sector of the economy. And when you see a catalyst, you're looking at aviation ensuring that, and it's a form of transportation, and it's tied to the intermodal means of transportation, i.e. the road, i.e. the rail, the waterways. So aviation as in itself is not a standalone. It's supposed to complement those intermodal means of transportation. And with that intermodal means of transportation, we're able to ensure that there is connectivity in capital letters across Nigeria. We should ensure a vibrant domestic market. Once there's a vibrant domestic air market, we have the population. Do we have the disposable income? That's not for the Minister of Aviation. So it's more to the trade. So what's pushing? In aviation, we have lots of drivers. Each state has an economic zone, or should have economic zone. With that economic zone, we'll now have drivers that is pushing that travel. It could be tourism, it could be mining, it could be agriculture, it could be adding value added to all these growth, so that you now are trading, or just training and services. So you have all these drivers that are located across Nigeria, and that's what's going to be driving the need to travel to this place. So you see the need to open up lots of cities. We've actually seen that over time. We started off with what you call the triangular locations, which is Lagos, Abuja, and Port Harcourt. But over years, in the last 10 years, we've seen secondary airports open up. We've seen that Ibom, which is normally a secondary major airport. We've seen Benin, we've seen Enugu, and then we've seen a lot of state airports as well opening up. Some are viable, some are not. But with that, once you have these drivers, it actually connects what you call the origin and destination within Nigeria. So once we have that set within Nigeria, it now puts a very good platform for regional movements, because don't forget, Nigeria is the source. Not just forget, there are facts and data to show for it. People come in from across West Africa to buy in Nigeria. Nigeria is a huge importing city, or country, sorry. Lagos is the major hub. So it's been able to come in, they buy, and it's transferred to across West Africa. So you find out trade and all this thing is done within Nigeria. Then we have a West African hub, which most of the domestic airlines are opening up now. And with that connectivity, it helps a huge challenge that we have at the moment, which is the challenge of intra-Africa movement. Yeah. And that would address the major concern that's a big headache for you, that you were talking about, the AFTA initiative. So with that addressed, it's going to help with what you call the guided trade policy, which is a major front burner for AFTA. So with this said,
it's intertwined.
It's intertwined. It's intertwined. And that's why you see lots of drivers are tied to aviation. It's not just aviation. You find out that people going on tourism, people going on business, people going on other things. So that's how aviation is going to be a major catalyst. And then if the minister, incoming minister, will be able to address, we're at 0.4% to GDP now. What is our goal? Let's have a smart, measurable policy. What will be our goal in the next 6 months? And what are the drivers? What are we going to do to ensure that goal is met within 6 months, then 1 year, 18 months, and 24 months thereafter?
Monitoring and evaluation and all of that, of all of the policies. I must thank you so much. Really interesting chatting with you around the aviation sector. It's always very interesting, I must tell you so very much. I've been speaking to Mr. Tayo Ojuri, who is the managing partner with Aglo Aviation Support Services Limited. Thank you so much for your time and your contribution on the program.
It's always a pleasure. Thank you.
All right.